In the last session, we have seen the replicas, like how the replicas works and how we can reduce the load on the actual production database instance with the help of the replicas. That's what we covered. And in the today's session, let's talk about a multi-AG deployment. So if you remember, whenever we created the database instances, we have chosen the single AG deployment, which means whatever the database we create, that database is getting created in a single availability zone, in a single availability zone, which means high availability might not be possible. But Amazon also provides different deployment strategies. Amazon is offering different deployment strategies. So coming to these deployment strategies, the first one is single AG deployment. And the second one is multi-AZ deployment. Single AG and multi-AG. Multi-AG means the database is getting created across multiple availability zones. But in the multi-AG, we have two different types available. One is multi-AZ DB instance, and the second one is multi-AZ DB cluster. One is a multi-AZ DB instance, and the second one is a multi-AZ DB cluster. Generally, what is the meaning of a cluster? Group of multiple machines together is known as a cluster, right? Okay. The same way here, first of all, the multi-AG in the sense, whatever the database we are going to create, a copy of that copy of that database will be maintained in a different availability zone for high availability. That is the main concept of multi-AG. First thing, multi-AG deployment means in this deployment model, the database instance will be created in two different availability zones, or I can say in this deployment model, the copy of the database will be created in another availability zone for high availability. What does that mean? It's a kind of primary and secondary. It's a kind of a primary and secondary. So what is the advantage? Whenever there is an issue with the hardware or the availability zone of the database, whenever there is an issue with the hardware of the database instance or the availability zone of the database instance, that means the database instance is in which availability zone. If that availability zone has some connectivity issues, network issues, hardware issues, or whatever, then the copy of the database can provide the service from another availability zone. Another availability zone. It's a kind of active passive, primary, secondary kind of a thing. This is purely to maintain the high availability. And again, this multi-AZ deployment is classified into two categories. Earlier, there was only one multi-AZ deployment. That's it. But later, Amazon introduced two different multi-AZ deployments. So AWS offers, or I can say RDS offers, two types of multi-AZ deployments. Two different types of multi-AZ deployments. One is multi-AZ DB instance. The second one is multi-AZ DB cluster. One is multi-AZ DB instance and the second one is a multi-AZ DB cluster. So as per our discussion, earlier discussion, what is the main goal of the multi-AZ deployment? What is the main goal of the multi-AZ deployment? for high availability, right? For high availability. But here, we can't get high performance using this multi-AZ. It's purely for high availability. But by introducing the multi-AZ DB cluster, Amazon offers high availability along with a high performance. Along with high performance. In general, multi-AG is a primary database and a standby database in another availability zone. I mean, as a beginner level, we can say multi-AZ, is equal to primary DB plus standby DB in another availability zone. So whenever primary fails, standby will provide you the service, like how it looks like. So if you see here, if I try to create a multi-AZ DB instance, first a database instance will be created, right? And this will be created in US East 1A, and we call it as a primary. As we have chosen multi-AG deployment, what Amazon does is it will create similar database in a different availability zone. And this is known as a standby. This is known as standby, which means always the end users or the applications will be connected to the primary and they will get only one endpoint. This keeps standby. It will not provide any service. Whenever primary fails, immediately the same endpoint will be pointed to this one, which means it automatically becomes primary. And there is a continuous replication. So whatever the data is getting created here, it will be replicated to the standby instance. This is what multi-AG. So here, the challenge is whenever the primary is healthy, the standby kept idle, means there is no use, right? You have a working database as a standby, but we are not utilizing the resources. But Amazon will charge you for both database instances because they will allocate resources and all. So to overcome this, Amazon introduced this multi-AG DB cluster. What exactly the multi-AG DB cluster? The multi-AZ DB cluster, there is going to be a cluster, right? In this cluster, you are going to have one writer. This is called as writer, and two readers. It's a standard setting. By default, you will get one writer and one reader. And here you will get two URLs, two endpoints. I can say writer endpoint and here reader endpoint. So here you are going to have your application and it will be connected to the cluster. The developers configure both the writer endpoint and reader endpoint. Application will write all the data into the writer instance and all the data gets replicated to the reader. And whenever there is a read operation, and that traffic can be distributed to the reader instances also, means we can reduce the load on the primary, the actual database instance in the cluster concept. So in a basic words, I can say in the multi-AG DB cluster, Amazon RDS will create one writer and two usable reader instances or two usable standby instances. So whenever this writer failed, automatically one of these two readers will become a writer, and this writer endpoints all automatically connects all the traffic to the new writer. So here we are using the resources in an effective way because we are paying for all the standby instances, right? If we are able to use those standby instances to improve the performance, that will be good. That is what we can get in the multi-AG DB cluster. So earlier there was only one multi-AG, but from the last 3 years or 4 years, we have two different categories. One is multi-AG DB instance and multi-AZ DB cluster. Okay, so first let us write down few points about the multi-AG DB instance, and then we will write down about the multi-AZ DB cluster, and we will launch instances using both the types, multi-AZ DB instance and cluster. So in the multi-AG DB instance, one primary database and one standby database instance in a different availability zone will be created. And I said there is a replication, right? What type of replication? Synchronous. So whenever the primary is unhealthy due to some hardware issues or networking issues, then the standby becomes primary and offers high availability and high availability. So you might have a question. What if I delete the primary instance manually? Amazon will consider that you don't need the database anymore, and they will delete the entire database along with the standby database instance. So whenever there is a failure of availability zone, connectivity, or a storage failure, whatever it is, automatically the standby will becomes a primary. So multi-AZ DB cluster, right? Okay, so here, what exactly is going to happen is one writer and two readers will be created. Instead of a standby, two readers will be created, and those two readers will be in two different availability zones. Primary in one availability zone, two readers, right? Second availability zone and third availability zone. They will be spread across multiple availability zones. So even the failure of two availability zones, the database is highly available. That is the first thing. And the second thing, while the primary is healthy, you can use the readers, the standby instances, to reduce the load on the primary, and you can improve the performance of the database. Whenever there is a less load, automatically the performance will be increased, right? Okay, so I can write down in this way, one primary database and two standby, or I can say readers, in two different availability zones. And what is the advantage? While the primary is healthy, we can use the standby instances for read operations, or to serve read requests and reduce the load on the primary database. whenever the primary DB instance has any issues due to hardware, networking, connectivity, operating system patching, application maintenance, or availability zone failure or something, then one of these readers becomes primary and serve the users to maintain the high availability. The main advantage here is even though the primary is healthy, we can use the standby instances for a read purposes. What is the use case? It is better for high read workloads plus high availability. So the main use case for this is whenever you are looking for high availability plus better, or I can say whenever you have high read workloads. And the first one is only for high availability. It is not intended for high read workloads and all the things. And here, how much you will be charged? In this case, you will be charged for 2 instances. In this case, you will be charged for 3 instances. Simple thing. How many instances you are having? Those many. And in this cluster, multi-AZ DB cluster generates two endpoints. One is writer and reader endpoints. And a writer endpoint always points to the writer instance, and the reader endpoint connects both the reader instances. If you use one reader input, automatically it will distribute all the traffic across both standby or reader instances. Okay, now what we do is create a MySQL database instance using multi-AZ DB instance. Then we will create a MySQL DB instance using multi-AZ DB cluster. Let us launch instances using both the things, and we will observe how they looks like. Okay, right. So first thing what we have to do, let us log into our Amazon account, which already I think I have logged in. Yeah. Navigate to RDS. So on the left side, let me click on databases, create database. So where it is, so here MySQL, right? And see, okay, I will show you one thing. If I choose something else, you can't see, right? I can't select multi-AZ DB cluster here. Why? I have chosen the old engine database engine version, which doesn't support multi-AZ DB cluster. So if you want to know like what database engine version supports multi-AZ DB cluster, just turn on this filter, show only versions that supports multi-AZ DB cluster. Right? You can turn on this and it will display the list of databases. See, now you can't see 5 dot something. Okay, let me choose the latest one. You can choose either both a production or DevOps. That doesn't matter. It's just a template. Now here, I will select this one, multi-AZ deployment, DB instance, where you will get a 2 instances. See, primary instance, writer or a read. For both the things, you have to use same instance. For standby, no endpoint, which means you cannot connect to standby instance at any cost. Only you can use the standby whenever the primary got failed. Choose that. Database instance identifier, I will say multi-AZ DB instance, multi-AZ DB instance, username, password. Let me choose self-managed, master password. Let me choose a T series, T3.micro. I will go with lowest possible options to avoid unnecessary charges. And remember, multi-AG is not free tier eligible. All options are same as earlier. The only difference is choosing the deployment method. That's it. Create database. That's it. The database instance will be created. Now the question is, can you see two database instances? Can you see two database instances like primary and standby? No, you can't see. Because for the standby instance, you don't get any endpoint. You can see only one database instance. In the backend, this endpoint, here endpoint will be generated, right? That will be connected to primary. Whenever primary fails, standby becomes primary. But in the front end, you can see this only. In the front end, you can see this only. But in the back end, the connection will be connected to primary or standby based on their health state. Because you can't, I already said, right? You can't use the standby instance. That's why you can, but how to identify whether it is a multi-AG or not? That I will explain the moment once the database creation process is completed. I will show you like where you can identify whether it is a multi-AZ deployed or a single AZ deployed. Okay, right. So then while it is getting created, let me create this also. Another database instance using multi-AZ DB cluster. Let me click on create database, choose this one. Let me choose the latest database version or whatever. This one, you have to choose this one. What happens? It creates a primary DB instance with two readable standbys in separate availability zones. What exactly it provides? Uptime, redundancy, increased read capacity, because application can read the data from not only from the primary, they can read from the readable standby instances also, and it will reduce write latency. Why? Read operations can be handled by the readable standbys so that your primary instance can perform the right actions quickly. So select this one. I will say my prod cluster, the name of the cluster, username, password, and from here everything is going to be the same. Now you can see there is no T series. Can you see T3.micro or something? No, because Amazon doesn't support T3.micro or any T series for this multi-AG DB cluster. So I will go with the C6GD.medium, which is also chargeable, 1 CPU, 2 GB of a RAM. And let me go with small storage. Publicly access, yes. Security group, MySQL. Okay. Let me enable enhanced monitoring and let me choose a 5 seconds. So at every 5 seconds, it will observe the database health and all the things. Logs. See, what is the cost? $181 per month. Create the database. Anyways, I'm going to delete in the first 1 hour itself, so I'm okay with that. Can you see the difference? This is the cluster. How many databases are getting created? 3. But initially, all the three are showing as a readers. Don't worry. But once the database creation got succeeded, one of these three will become a writer, and the other two are a readers. And you can see all these three created across three different availability zones: 1A, 1B, 1D. Right? You can see this. Let me refresh. It will take minimum 10 to 15 minutes of time. Okay, anyways, let us go back to the first one. This is the database, right? Here the endpoint got created, right? And how to know whether it is multi-AZ deployed or not. That you can see here. Let it be create first, then I can show you where you have to check and all. But initially, it is showing multi-AZ as no, right? Can you see? Yeah, just wait for some time to make the status available, then we can verify again. This definitely will take 10 minutes, and the second cluster will take definitely 15 minutes of time. Let me refresh the page to check the status. Can you see in the cluster? If there is some issue in USB 1B availability zone, which means the writer is going to be right? Then one of these two will become a writer. Or this database is available on one physical server in the backend, right? If there is some issue with that hardware, that physical server, then the instance one, the current writer is unhealthy. That case also, one of the readers will become a writer. Can I delete that writer manually? Can I delete that writer? We'll check. We will check that once everything is ready. We need to wait until the status is available. While they are getting created, if you have any questions, just let me know so that we can discuss about your questions. Also, while we are creating the database, depending on your requirement, you have to choose the database engine. I'm not saying only you have to choose MySQL. You can choose anything. Let me choose Microsoft SQL Server. But this is not an open source, right? This is not an open source. This is the licensed one. Then how to pay the licensing cost is there are two different licensing options available. One is license included, and the second one is BYOL, bring your own license. Let me show you. If I choose Microsoft SQL Server, if I choose SQL Server Enterprise Edition, and I will choose the database engine version, because Microsoft SQL has these many editions. In each edition, we have these many versions also. Let me choose the latest one. What is the license strategy? License included, which means Amazon will charge you for the database instance and for MySQL Server software also. That is what the license included means. And there is something called BYOL. You can see Oracle. I have selected Oracle Database Engine, right? So here, let me choose this Oracle Enterprise Edition. What is the license? Bring your own license. What does that mean is you need to purchase the Oracle Enterprise Edition software license for database, and you need to activate. And for this standard edition, we have two different options. You can choose license included, so that Amazon will offer you a license and they will charge you for the license. If you choose BYON, Amazon only cost you for the database and you need to purchase your own license for that. That is the difference. And let me show you something else. Okay, production. See, There is no three options, right? There is no three options. Multi-AZ DB instance, multi-AZ DB cluster. What does that mean? That multi-AZ DB cluster is not available for all database engines. I think it seems it's a confusion for you, right? Okay. So you can't use multi-AZ DB cluster for Oracle. See, there are only two options. If I choose do not create a standby instance means it's a single AG deployment. If I choose this one, it is a multi-AG DB instance. That's it. Let us choose for all database version. These two supports. MySQL already we tested. Let me choose for PostgreSQL. It is also supported PostgreSQL, MariaDB. Where is that? For MariaDB, it is not supported, right? And then Microsoft SQL Server. See, just multi-AZ. That's it, multi-AZ DB instance. And what about the new version IBM DB2? This is also not supported. Means that multi-AZ DB cluster is only supported or available for MySQL, PostgreSQL, and MariaDB database engines only. And sorry, even not for MariaDB, only for PostgreSQL and MySQL, only for these two. And here Aurora also having those two database engines. So for Aurora also it supports. So we need to write a point here after creating this. Multi-AZ DB cluster is only supported for MySQL and a PostgreSQL database engines. For other database engines, we need to use multi-AG DB cluster. Might be in the future, the multi-AG DB instance. Might be in the future, Amazon might roll out the support for multi-AZ DB cluster for the remaining database engines also. But for now, it only supports MySQL and a PostgreSQL. And just again, one more point here. As Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle are licensed database engines, and RDS offers two types of licensing methods or licensing options. What are those? The first one is license included, and the second one is BYOL, which means bring your own license. If you choose license included, RDS provide the license engine. Example, Microsoft SQL Server. They will charge you for database instance resources. Like to create the database instance, you need to choose CPU, RAM, storage, plus an extra cost for database engine software. And if you choose BYOL, RDS only charge you for the database instance resources, and you are responsible to purchase the license and activate on RDS. Means you need to bring your own database engine license. Example, Oracle database, Oracle database. The remaining all are open source. They don't require any licensing cost like MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB. They are free of cost. I mean, the database software is free. Simple logic. Don't get confused with the database instance cost and software cost. Let us say if I am offering you a software at free of cost, means you can download it for free and you can use it. But to download and install, you need a laptop, right? To get the laptop, you need to spend some money to purchase it. Without a laptop, you can't use my software. If I am saying my software is free, that doesn't mean I am providing a laptop or a desktop to install and run that software. The same thing. Database software is open source or a community edition means Amazon won't charge you for that software license. But we are creating some database server, right? For that, Amazon will charge. And in the bring your and for this, Amazon will charge you for database server as well as the software which we install in that. I mean, we don't install manually, but Amazon will install for us and they will make that software up and running so that our databases are highly available or healthy. Okay, right. So let me go back to check the status of those two databases. Okay, it seems a backup is getting created. Okay, so this one, the first one, forget about the second one. We will discuss about that later. This is a multi-AZ DB instance, which means we can see only one database instance, right? Status is available, but role is instance. But how should we know that it is highly available or a multi-AZ? If you scroll aside, you can see multi-AZ as yes, right? Means this is a multi-AZ deployed DB instance. Let me click here. Endpoint, right? This, there is only one endpoint, that's it. And if I scroll down a little bit, you can see there is a replication. Means the data is getting replicated to standby database instance. Standby database instance, which is in the backend. Whenever the primary fails, the standby will become a primary. And how endpoint will automatically connect to the new primary database instance, and that will be taken care by RDS completely. We are nowhere responsible for that. We are nowhere responsible for that. The only disadvantage or the challenge is it is only for high availability, not to improve the performance of your database instance. And here, this is the cluster, right? The second type. If I click here, can you see how many endpoints? Write endpoint and reader endpoint. Let us access using both writer and reader. How to know which one is writer and which one is reader? This one, right? This endpoint, right? This endpoint connects the database instance one because this is a writer. After some time, there is some issue in the one and the three become writer. So the same endpoint connects to the instance three. Okay, let me show you. Let me open the SQL Yoga tool to connect to the database using the writer endpoint. Let me clean up everything which we created in the last session. Okay, so here I will give the name as a writer. Okay, writer endpoint, username admin. Just I clicked on connect. I hope it connects. If I gave the correct security group and all, right, writer. And there is no database. I will create the database. Right click, create database. I will say my prod DB, database name, create, right, tables. Let me create some data, create table. Same way last data, serial number. Table name is going to be students info. Column name serial number, which is going to be the number numeric. Length, I will say 3. Name, which is going to be a variable character. Length is 20 characters. Then let me use some comments. Going to be varchar, variable character, and it is going to be 500 characters. Save. What happened? What happened? Save. No, I said, okay. Now everything is good. It got created. Let me add some data. One, some comments. Let me add two second name. Let me add your names. Some comment. Three entries, right? So what happened here? All these three records will be replicated to the other two readers. Let me show you. Let me connect to one of the readers also. Let me use a new tab. Just I'm using giving a name called a reader, endpoint, username, password. I'm connecting to reader. I mean the standby instance, but which we can use for read only for read queries and all the things. See here, my prod DB tables, right? Right click, open table. Can you see? Okay, let me add a name. And if you refresh here, you can see that fourth record to the standby instance. Okay, so here, let me show you. Right, we have a 3. 1, 2, 3, because here you can see 1, 2, 3. Which one is writer? One is writer, right? One is writer now. And this is a reader. And this is a reader. And availability zones, in which availability zones we have 1B, 1A, 1D. 1B, 1A, 1D. This is in 1B availability zone, 1A, 1D. Now, if there is any problem in the 1B availability zone, automatically the 2 or 3 will become a writer, right? Okay, now what I do is let me try to delete the writer instance. This is the writer instance, right? Let me try to delete the writer instance. What happens? Any guess? I'm deleting the writer instance. So you can't delete a single database instance. Assume there is a problem in this particular database instance. So here we have an option called, where is that? Choose the cluster, actions, failover. Generally, when we use this is, let us say I want to install some updates on the writer instance and I want to reboot it. Before rebooting, I mean, if I reboot it, it will take 1 minute or 2 minutes, right? To avoid that downtime, what I do is we can change the roles from writer to reader. So a kind of simulating some issue. So actions, click on failover. What happens now? That one will become a reader. One of these two, the two or three will becomes a writer. Failover. Failover means if you want to do some maintenance, manual failover I have done. In general, if there is a problem in the one, automatically that failover will happens automatically. Means there is some issue, make that one as a reader. So what is the status here? Failing over. It will change the roles. Will change the roles. Let us wait. We will observe one becomes a reader, two or three will become a writer. Earlier, this writer connected to one, right? Now, this writer endpoint will connect to the new writer. No need to change anything in your applications. Automatically, everything will be done in the back. We no need to reconfigure, no need to change anything. Okay, let me refresh to check what's happening. See what happened? One is a reader, two is a writer. What happened? This becomes a reader and this becomes a writer. Now that writer endpoint, right? Writer endpoint, whatever we are using, that will be connected to this one. After some time, if something went wrong, this becomes a reader. This might becomes a writer. Now, the users will be connected to this one. Everything will be taken care by the cluster. Everything is taken care by the multi-AZ DB cluster. This is what the multi-AZ deployments of your RDS. Are you guys clear? Any question? Are you guys clear with the deployment strategy or any questions? Okay, we have some small things left like RDS proxy, right? And Amazon Aurora, that is also a type of a database engine, which is Amazon's own database engine. If you want that also, I will show you. Mostly tomorrow, I will show you that with the multi-AZ. It has some extra additional features available. For only for Amazon Aurora, there are some extra features available that we will discuss, like backtrack feature. You can create more readers. So this is the fixed one. You can't add more readers or more writers. But for Amazon Aurora database, you can have up to 16 readers. And it also supports backtrack, right? We will cover those two. And also we will cover RDS proxy. RDS proxy also we will cover. There's a small topic, just it will take like 5 to 10 minutes of time. Then we can say like RDS is done. Okay, right. Any questions? And also how to delete this? You can't delete the individual database instances. Select the cluster, actions. What happened? Okay, it seems this database has deletion protection option enabled. Might be I accidentally selected that. Let me click on modify. Scroll down. Yeah, there's the one. Apply immediately. I don't want to wait a minute also because it's a per month $180, which means per day $6. Per day $6 in the sense like per hour, how much it is? Approximately 40 cents or something, right? Half dollar, 40 rupees or so. Okay, now it's done. Now let me select Actions, delete. I don't need any final snapshot. Delete me. Click on delete DB cluster, and all instances will be deleted. The same way for the multi-AG DB instance. Select the DB instance, actions. It seems for this also I accidentally enabled, because at the time of creation, we have chosen the prod template, right? By default for the prod template, this enable deletion production will be enabled. Even in the real time, that is recommended so that no one will accidentally delete your database instances. And for EC2 instances also, we have that option called termination protection. If you enable that, the instance can't be terminated, can't be deleted. If you want, just you can check that. While you're practicing, just go to settings, actions, and check, is there any option called termination protection for EC2 instances? Yes, it exists. Enable it, try to terminate, you can't. Come again to that place, disable it, and then you can terminate. Okay, right. Any questions? Okay, then if you guys are clear, let us stop the session here. And tomorrow, let us cover Amazon Aurora RDS proxy. Okay, RDS proxy is a small feature, and we'll cover those two, and we'll close the RDS topic by tomorrow. Then the next day, then the next session will be DynamoDB and some ETL. I mean, there is something called OLAP database, which is Redshift for data analytic purpose that will be used. Actually, we don't use that, but we cover all databases. So why don't we touch that also? Okay, that Redshift, I will give you some brief overview about that also. Then we can close the entire database part. Okay, then thank you everyone. Let's continue tomorrow.